Glad to have you with us. Welcome to Business Incorporated. I am BC Adebayo. On today's program, IMF says a second major wave of COVID-19 infections could trigger more economic disruptions. Nigeria's candidate for the WTO top job, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, speaks on her plans if she gets the job. And South Africa's foreign direct investment inflows rise to $1.74 billion in the first quarter of 2020. Well, let's begin the show right away with intraday numbers coming from the African stock markets, and the South African JSE index remains in the red with a 1.02% decline at intraday. Well, intraday data were unavailable from the Nigerian Stock Exchange, but the market saw a 0.06% gain yesterday. The EGX 30 was down 1.86% at intraday, while the Kenyan Burse closed 0.27% positive on Wednesday. And in the Middle East, most of the markets were in the green at intraday. The Abu Dhabi and Dubai indexes saw gains of 1.26% and 0.22% each, while the Qatar index was the only negative. The Saudi index was up 0.21% at intraday. And crossover now to Europe, where stocks are trading in negative territory today, failing to get a boost from Chinese growth data showing a rebound in the economy. Investors also have their eyes on the outcome of the European Central Bank's meeting today. Orich Bats is ready to tell us more about this. Good afternoon, Orich. So no changes, and that was what many ECB watchers said when asked what the European Central Bank might come up with at its regularly scheduled meeting today. Now, the ECB is already firing on all cylinders, but could it and does it feel that it needs to do even more to counteract the corona recession?
Yeah, it's prepared to do more if necessary. That's what ECB said in a statement following the meeting. And President Lagarde will probably elaborate on that with questions from colleagues in the press conferences that just started. Well, it just started 2 minutes ago. And the people will insist, at what time, at what levels, at what critical moments will you increase that level. But the ECB just upped the pandemic emergency support program by 600 million euros in June to a total of 1.4 trillion. And Christine Lagarde last week already said that they now are at a stage where they can give themselves some time to assess the effect that it's having in the markets.
Now, China reported growth in the second quarter, and the numbers have turned positive, although nothing like the levels pre-corona. How are the people in European markets interpreting these numbers?
Well, people here are disappointed, and it's showing in the markets across Europe. You see negatives, the major indices in the red, although not by much, because, GDP grew by 3.2%, whereas it tanked in the first quarter. But you saw worrisome consumer data, with consumer spending falling for the 5th month in a row, and this does not augur well, and also increasing U.S.-China tensions also weighing on the market.
Now, let's have a look at the car industry, which is a key industry in Europe, especially for Germany, but also important in many other countries. Of course, sales figures for European markets in June were released today. Tell us what they look like.
Yeah, they're improved in the month of June, but of course nowhere near where they were a year ago. When you look at the number of cars that were sold, they were 22.3% down from last year, up in comparison to May, but significantly down in comparison to last year. And the ASEA, the industry association, very clearly saying consumers are back, but not back the way they once were. Interestingly, France was the only country to post an increase in sales in June, while Germany and also Spain and Italy posted declines yet again.
Thank you, Orich. We'll see you again tomorrow.
Thank you.
Now let's cross over to London, where Juliana Olayinka will be telling us more about the just-released UK payrolls data. Good afternoon, Juliana. We've seen official figures showing that the number of workers on UK company payrolls fell by 649,000 between March and June. Of course, unemployment has not surged as many feared because large numbers of firms have put employees on the government-backed furlough scheme. But economists say that the full effect on employment will not be felt until the scheme ends in October. Is that the true situation?
It is the true situation, Bissy, and that 649,000 figure that you quoted is a lot of jobs, 75,000 alone last month. And really, with this labour market data that we received today, we're looking in the rearview mirror, really. It hasn't taken into account the job cuts in John Lewis, the job cuts in Boot, and also G4S, that security service sector. So we are expecting mass unemployment. As you said, the furlough scheme pretty much keeping the unemployment figure balanced at about 3.9%. Unfortunately, we are going to expect it to rise dramatically. Some estimates put it up to about 13% when the furlough scheme does taper off in October.
Now, let's talk about rents, which have continued to climb across England, but are sliding in London as Airbnb owners abandon hopes of attracting holidaymakers and put their properties on the long-term rental markets. Why are they giving up so soon?
Well, they're looking at the data, aren't they? They're listening to chief execs coming out of the airline industry. We've already heard from the managing director of Heathrow, from all of the airlines, that they're not expecting pre-COVID passenger numbers for at least 4 years. And the business market, business flight travel, has completely been wiped out, at least for the next year or so, because of Zoom and other software video conferencing data or platforms which allow people to talk remotely across borders. And that was the mainstay of Airbnb. So people that did have their properties on there are now looking to rent. And as you said, London rents are dramatically falling, particularly in Zone 2, I believe, where this Rightmove and Guardian survey was taken. Apparently in Zone 2, which for our viewers in London is Hackney, Brixton, Hammersmith, so just outside of the main area, rents, asking price for rents are down 8%. And we are expecting this trend to continue because there are many offices that are still asking their employees to stay at home. Why come into the office and pay huge rents for that when people can work safely at home? So if you are working from home, you don't need to do the commute, which is why we saw floods of people come into London. So good news for renters, bad news for landlords and the likes of Airbnb.
I can imagine, Juliana. Now, just before you go, tell us how the equities and currencies markets are performing at intraday.
Well, not great economic data out of the UK this week, so no surprises that the FTSE All-Share is down 0.55% at intraday. The FTSE 100 also down at 0.53%, and the FTSE 250 is down by 0.63%. Similar in the currencies market, the pound is down on the dollar by 0.43%, also down on the euro by 0.31%, and at intraday it's also down on the Japanese yen by 0.27%.
Many thanks, Juliana. In other news now, candidates vying to lead the 164 member countries of the World Trade Organization say a quick decision needs to be reached to avoid a deep crisis as it began vetting process to replace Brazil's Roberto Azevedo, who will step down a year early at the end of August. The nominations from 8 countries have been submitted after 2 months of campaigning, which will be followed by a final decision by consensus. While addressing the WTO members in Geneva, Nigeria's candidate Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala says her experience in the financial world will come in handy in the new role if she gets elected. Let's listen to her.
Madam, I'm Angela. I'm a journalist from ChinaSender.com. I have one question for you. I know you are a financial expert, but you never participate directly in a trade negotiation. Do you think that you will be challenged for not being a proper trade expert in this competition? And what advantages do you think you can bring as a financial expert in this perspective? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that's a totally wrong notion. And, you know, I've paid respect to my competitors because that's my nature. I don't criticize other people. I respect them. Competitors who have been saying that she's not a trade expert, they're wrong. I'm a development economist. And you cannot do that without looking at trade. Trade is a central part of development. So I've been doing it my whole career at the World Bank. I was working on trade policy reform in middle and low-income countries at the bank. As finance minister, the customs service in my country reported to me, and that's all about trade facilitation. I helped my country's negotiations with my trade minister on the ECOWAS common external tariffs. I don't know how much more trade you can have than that. So those who say I don't have trade, they're mistaken. I think the qualities I have are even better because I combine development economics with trade, knowledge, along with finance. And you need those combinations of skills to lead the WTO. So I think I have the skills that are needed. So this is a familiar territory to me, not an alien one. I'm a trade person.
We wish Dr. Okonjo-Iweala the very best. Now, the International Monetary Fund says although global economic activity is picking up after an unprecedented decline this year due to the coronavirus pandemic, a second major wave of infections could trigger more disruptions. The managing director of the IMF says the fiscal cost of actions aimed at containing the pandemic and mitigating its economic fallout are driving up already high debt levels, but it's premature to start withdrawing needed safety nets. The IMF last month further slashed its 2020 global output forecast, predicting a 4.9% contraction and weaker than expected recovery in 2021. Ms. Georgieva says $11 trillion in fiscal measures by G20 members and other countries, as well as a massive central bank liquidity injections, have put a floor under the global economy. South Africa's foreign direct investment inflows in the first quarter of 2020 rose to 29 billion rand, or $1.74 billion, compared to inflows of 10.5 billion rand in the final quarter of last year. In its quarterly bulletin, the South African Reserve Bank says direct investment liabilities increased mainly as a result of the foreign acquisition of a domestic manufacturer and distributor of food and beverage products. At the same time, portfolio investments reflect in a record of buying and selling of securities such as bonds and shares showed a sharp outflow of 97.6 billion rand in the first quarter compared to inflows of 9.3 billion rand in the fourth quarter of 2019. Non-residents sold bonds worth 74.4 billion in the first quarter, while selling 23.1 billion rand in equities. Zimbabwean industries are having a hard time driving revenues, putting them on a dangerous path which might lead to their total collapse. And that's according to a report put together by the Business Times. The report says a cocktail of challenges like foreign currency shortages, rising production costs, liquidity constraints, high inflation, the sharp reduction in disposable incomes, fuel shortages, and general economic decline has greatly affected Zimbabwean industries. According to the publication, analysts have accused the Finance Minister, Mthuli Ncube, and the Reserve Bank Governor, John Mangude, of implementing policies that are only meant to ease the pains of economic misery rather than to eradicate the problem permanently through economic development policies. Our commodities market segment will be focusing on the price movement of melon seeds in just a moment. Please stay with us. Welcome back. Melon seed is a main ingredient for a popular Nigerian delicacy, amongst others. The average price of the machine-peeled melon seed has increased by 50% to 37,500 naira per 50 kg bag from 25,000 naira per 50 kilogram of bag last year. But that's what we would be discussing on the domestic commodities segment with the research analyst at the financial derivatives company, Dumebi Iyeke. Good afternoon, Dumebi. Thanks for joining us on the program. Tell us what's responsible. All right, tell us what's responsible for this sharp increase in the price of melon seeds.
I mean, BC, if you go to the market, the price of machine-peeled egusi, that's the melon seeds, is going for about 300 naira to 350 per cup, while the hand-peeled one is going for about 400 naira to about 450 per cup. And just like other commodities, the COVID-19 has really had an impact on the market for melon seeds. So that's one of the reasons why we're seeing this price increase. On the supply side, seeing that seasonality also affected the price of melon seeds in the market. We've also seen that supply disruptions also, affected the price of the commodity. Now, moving to the demand side, things are not the way they used to be before. Melon seed, egusi soup rather, is a major delicacy that, a lot of people consume during parties, weddings, even in schools, especially for boarding students. But right now that all these social events and activities are not in place, the demand for egusi soup or melon seeds, has really, gone down. So these are some of the factors that have affected the price of this particular commodity in the market and caused this drastic price change.
Well, Nigeria is the top producer of melon seeds globally, and this commodity happens not to be part of the top agricultural export commodities. So you think there's any way the country can boost exports with this commodity and actively participate in the global market for melon seeds?
Yeah, I mean, Nigeria currently produces over 500,000 metric tons of melon seeds annually, and we have a potential of about 1 million, tons of this particular commodity. So, with that, with those numbers in place, it's obvious that we have the potential to, increase production and actively participate in the market for melon seeds. But I mean, Nigeria has four top commodities that we really garner a lot of export earnings from, which are LNG, oil, cocoa, and sesame seeds. And the truth of the matter remains that melon seeds are very potent at this time for investment, and with an increase in the production of this particular commodity, we can actually participate both in the domestic market, the inter-regional market, and the international market for this commodity. But the truth of the matter boils down to the fact that all of this, we have to focus on the production of this commodity. There's need to improve the storage facility. There's need to improve the quality, quantity, especially, just basically the value-added process of this particular commodity to successfully compete in the international market for melon seeds.
Now, still talking about melon seeds now, they're actually rich in vitamins and proteins and can also be used to produce vegetable oil. Now, an increase in aggregate demand for it because of its use as an input for vegetable oil could lead to an increase in its price. Now, what do you think would be the impact of this development on the supply and the structure of the industry?
Yes, melon seeds are very rich in oil, in vegetable oil rather. So the increase in industrial demand for this particular commodity would, trigger an increase in its price. So what we'll see is, in the event of this, what we'll see is an increase in its price, and then farmers, this will be an incentive for farmers to boost the supply of this particular commodity. Now, when this happens, the initial impact of the market will be an increase in the price for melon seeds. And as the market looks very potent for investment and industrialization, there would be subsequently the price of melon seeds would drop, and there would be a very ample increase in the supply of vegetable oil in the market. So these are the two likely scenarios that are going to happen if there's an increase in the demand for melon seeds, and not just household demand, for industrial demand.
Research analyst at the FDC, Dumebi Iyeke, thanks for your input on the program.
Thank you so much.
Zambia expects its gross domestic product to shrink by around 4.2% in 2020, more than the 2.6% contraction forecast by the central bank in May. The country's finance minister says sectors including mining, energy, construction, manufacturing, tourism, trade and transport were all expected to record poor performances due to COVID-19. Before the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic, Zambia had estimated a growth of at least 3% this year. A decline in revenues and the increase in expenditures is expected to create a financing gap of 26.9 billion kwacha or $1.48 billion, and expenditure cuts will have to be introduced. Many South Africans have embraced online shopping during the coronavirus lockdown. An entrepreneur is seeking to close the gap in the market for an online delivery app that will service marginalized areas while creating jobs for the unemployed. Let's see this.
South Africa's township entrepreneurs are seizing the moment with more people forced to stay at home as the country sees a peak in coronavirus cases. After quitting his job because of the lockdown, this entrepreneur saw a gap in the market for an online delivery app that will service marginalized areas while creating jobs for the unemployed. Siaza Delivery couriers pharmacy orders, clothes, fast food and groceries.
When the president announced the lockdown, everyone was frustrated. A lot of people were scared of the virus, which you still are. And we found a niche market where I can locate drivers and create an app that will allow you to, at your door or at your home, sit and just order food and come through with everything.
Having long lagged behind much of the world, retailers and delivery startups in Africa's most advanced economy are experiencing an e-commerce boom as consumers shy away from shops during the pandemic. But what should be a boom for businesses suffering a sharp decline in foot traffic is straining the capacity of even South Africa's largest retailers, with customers complaining of long wait time and poor service. Sorting out those growing pains will dictate which companies emerge from the pandemic as e-commerce leaders and who gets left behind. Despite the glitches, analysts have been surprised by the growth in the industry over the lockdown period. E-commerce accounted for just 1.6% or $1.2 billion of South African retail sales in 2019, according to London-based market research firm Euromonitor.
Now it's very easy because you don't have to go outside. So you order and they bring your food at your gate. So it is convenient.
When lockdown restrictions imposed in late March were loosened in May, market researchers Urban Studies found only 50 to 70% of customers returned to shopping centers.
And that's where we end today's program. Thank you for watching IMBC at Adebayo.